Hello to all of my online students, and I appreciate so many of you getting in touch with me regarding the assignment I gave you on September 3rd. So I'm talking to you here on September 7th, and I'm fully aware some people have attempted to do the whole thing, some people haven't started it at all, and some people are waiting for me to get back to you before you get things going. So let me just try to break down this in a way that we all understand. And the first group of students I'm receiving emails from is a group that I'm going to call, they're really not getting any of this. So I'm going to try to keep this as simple as I can, okay? You are writing a section of a textbook about the COVID-19 pandemic that you just lived through. Now, when you write a textbook, textbooks have sections. There's a title, there are guiding questions, there's visuals, pictures, terms, people, and places, and a synopsis of what happened. There's your SAT word in red. Now, a synopsis is simply a short description of the most important information about something, a summary or an outline, okay? Now, you are writing it for a sophomore 100 years from now. When you are long gone, there will be some student who's trying to learn about what happened during this pandemic, and hopefully by reading your textbook section, they have an understanding of what happened. So that's group number one. Now, group number two, I'm going to call you, I get the big idea, but I need some details. Now, some people are asking me individual parts questions. So let me try to break down those 5 things I just showed you in a little more detail. The title, get the reader's attention. So here's an example of a mediocre title, COVID-19. That won't mean anything to a kid 100 years from now. How about the first pandemic in a century? Okay, that's a little more interesting than the first one. Now, your guiding questions would be main ideas that the student should be able to answer when done with this reading. So a good guiding question could be, what were the causes and the effects of the coronavirus? Maybe a guiding question, how did the coronavirus impact the economy of the world? These would be examples of guiding questions. Now, visuals. A lot of people learn with their eyes and ears, and some people really rely on using their eyes. I'm one of them. I need to have a good visual for me to learn. So I want you to have a pertinent and interesting visual. Now, pertinent, there's an SAT word for you. It means it relates to the subject. It connects with people. Okay, so have a good visual. Now, terms, people, and places. In telling the story, who do I need to add? Now, I'm going to make an argument in telling the story of COVID. President Trump has to be an individual that should be in there. Maybe a term that should be in there would be social distancing. Now, places, you might put China in there, or Italy that got hit really bad. I'll let you create your own history, but I want you to think about this. Now, in the writing portion, this is the one I'm getting the most questions about. I want it to be like Baby Bear's porridge, okay? Because Baby Bear's porridge, it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it was just right. That's why Goldilocks ate that bowl of porridge and not the other two. Never quite figured out how you can make one pot of porridge and have such a different temperature. I could never figure that out. But my point is that not too detailed, not too short. If you write your history saying, yeah, COVID happened in 2020 and it really messed things up, that doesn't tell the story. If you go into detail after detail, on March 13th this happened, and on March 14th that happened, way too much detail. I want it to be like Baby Bear's porridge, just right. Okay? Now I have a third group, and these are my more motivated, the people who've already put some time into it, and they're looking to fine-tune their textbook. Now, these are the people who I think got those 3 concepts I tried to teach you the other day: historical perspective, historical scale, and a primary source versus a secondary source. So the number 1 on the big hit 100, your future final, is historical perspective. Now, for my fine tuners, we all get this. History happens. It happens to all of us. Now, everyone has their own take on what happened. Now, good historians put their own biases aside, and they do one of 2 things when they write their history. They either stick with straight facts, or they provide multiple perspectives. Now, I'm going to call it younger person history, grade school history. A lot of times it's straight up facts. As you move higher in your education, as you get to those higher levels, you see more of the multiple perspectives, and quite honestly, it's more interesting that way, okay? So, to get into a little more detail, so let's say, shoot, I got my own opinion on coronavirus, but what should I include that's straight up fact? Time frame is straight up fact. The geography of where it hit, the science. What caused this virus to mutate, or what were the symptoms it caused when people who got it? These are facts. The casualty numbers, how many people died from it? These are facts. Now, if you want to get a little motivated, you could include a perspective from somebody in China, somebody in America, maybe the conservative versus the progressive in terms of the political divide. Maybe you could get an account from a victim or a victim's family, or an account from somebody who was really negatively affected by this versus some people that came out of this unscathed. Some people didn't affect their pocketbook. Nobody they knew got sick versus some people they knew died. So you have a choice. Again, there's more than one way to do this, but to get into more detail for you fine tuners, that's what I'm looking for in your account. Now, number 2 on the Big 100 final is your historical scale, the amount of detail. And this is the hard part. Okay, I struggle with this as a teacher. I don't want to bore you to tears, but I want to get you the points that you need to know. So it tells the story fully, but not too many details. You'll bore the reader. Not too few details where you leave out big parts of the story. Now, another part of scale is what level. Now, if you're going to talk about how coronavirus affected me, that wouldn't work for a textbook. How did it affect Livonia or Detroit or Redford or Southfield, wherever you're living? No. State? Probably not. Nation? Maybe. World? Yes. Now, is there a time and a place for these types of history? The very first assignment I gave you was this level of history. Now I think we're here. Sometimes I think we're here. But I'm going to argue the scale of COVID-19 should be a world scale. Okay? Now, the third item, primary sources. These are unbiased and let people think for themselves. So you could include in your history, I don't know, a newspaper headline that happened. You could put a photograph of what happened. The other day in class, I used that picture of the memorial at Belle Isle to try to make my point. So the reason why we use primary sources, they're unbiased and let people think for themselves. Now, secondary sources have value. These are the interpretations of history. But to be honest with you, this happens after the primary sources. This happens at the higher levels of history, and they're important. They have value. But for a textbook, I'm going to make an argument, primary sources is where it's at. So a secondary source would be, okay, you hear different sides of the history, and then you start having a conversation, okay, like, hey, this is my interpretation, here's how you see it. It's interesting. You argue the point. But as a textbook writer, you should rely on primary sources. The debates and discussions that follow are the secondary sources. So from your point of view, you might want to include the casualty statistics as one of your visual. You might want to include a photograph that really sums up what happened, okay? So are you still not getting it? Well, I gave you a sample of a textbook, and try to follow that template. I gave you that textbook sample so you can kind of follow along how it works. Your friends might be able to explain it in a way that I'm not explaining it to you. You can contact me. There's my email there, anthonysalsiccioli@clarencevilleschools.org, and you can arrange a one-on-one video conference with me, or you can email me. Maybe that would work. And again, use your brain. Now, this process of creating history has been done with every section of your textbook. What I mean by that, all the stuff we're going to learn together for a year, most of the people that wrote it are dust. They're long, long gone. What did they include in the story, and did they do a good job? Now, I'll be honest with you. I look at that textbook. Some sections are really good, some are mediocre, and some are poor. So again, history, you got to think about it like that. It's not a perfect science, and by you creating your own history, I think you're going to tap into that, okay? So I hope this helped, and I'm looking forward to reading what you create, and I look forward to talking with you on Wednesday. Okay, so I'll talk to you Wednesday. Thanks for watching.